But there is one thing that the FBI is really good at. They're really good at putting together false information in the form of a dossier to present to a court to spy on a presidential candidate.
So it's one rule for them and another one for everyone else. Well, I think we all have realized in the last 8 years or so that if the Democrats didn't have double standards, they would have no standards at all.
The biggest danger to the security of this country is the FBI's failures. This federal agency has failed over and over again to snuff out crimes of which they have become aware, crimes they failed to prevent, and crimes they failed to tell us about. On the other hand, those at the highest levels of the FBI have proven themselves to be quite efficient at using the power we confer upon them to operate on a political level, like dictators in third world countries.
The president taking note of this since 2017, and we'll get more into that. But I am being told exclusively that the White House is formulating a list of replacements right now for FBI Director Wray, but that a change will not be made until post-election. In fact, this list has been underway for at least over a month. And as I said, this is not the first time that Wray has broken with the president or made statements that are contradictory to the president. Also, Attorney General William Barr, back in 2019, he said that he didn't see that the Trump campaign was spied on after the Attorney General William Barr has said explicitly that he believed that the campaign was spied on.
Then Dan Tuono does a 180, saying, we received a lot of intelligence on the potential for violence before the actual assault on the Capitol. And when asked what he did, here's how he responds.
We received a lot of intelligence, like I said in my statement, a lot of intelligence information through all different means, be it through social media or through CHS's sources. And then we have a sharing mechanism with JTTFs. Across the country, we have Joint Terrorism Task Forces. And in this city, in D.C., we have a very robust JTTF.
Really? That's what you did? You filed it? You put it in a report?
His FBI continued to hide exculpatory evidence in the General Micheal Flynn case, and that has been the last straw. Now, as I said, there's no anticipated changes in personnel related to FBI Director Wray until post-election, and that's because some of the president's highest advisors, including his son-in-law Jared Kushner and also White House counsel Pat Cipollone, have deterred the president from making a change, citing the fallout that happened after the president fired FBI Director James Comey.
To rebut that, the Washington Post, of all newspapers, comes out and says the day before the assault on the Capitol, the FBI Norfolk office received information indicating calls for violence in response to unlawful lockdowns would begin on January 6th in Washington, and that people be, quote, ready to fight. That Congress needs to hear glass breaking, doors being kicked in, go there ready for war. Query. That's long before President Trump's speech even started, which is what the left alleges caused the riot.
I wrote interesting piece of information there about that list being formulated to replace Christopher Wray. Any names being floated about that you're hearing about?
I will say that Sidney Powell has been suggested to the administration. General Flynn's lawyer. She's a former U.S. attorney. She has quite the resume, actually, for it. But other than that, I probably can't give any other names on the list, but that was one that, they found sort of interesting.
But there is one thing that the FBI is really good at. They're really good at putting together false information in the form of a dossier to present to a court to spy on a presidential candidate. There were 17 errors the IG found that the FBI made in the application for a FISA warrant against Carter Page in order to spy on President Trump and his campaign, all of them in favor of the government against the president.
Sidney Powell. Great to see you, Sidney.
Thank you.
I'm sure you heard Emerald there. We'll get to that in a moment. But let's talk about this because you're a former prosecutor. What would happen if your office failed this many times to prosecute these sexual assault charges?
I would hope whoever was in charge of that would be terminated. Mr. Vance has shown an appalling record of handling sexual misconduct cases and generally being a paid-for political hack. So it would be nice to have someone in that office that stood up for actual justice. Well, I think we all have realized in the last 8 years or so that if the Democrats didn't have double standards, they would have no standards at all.
General Micheal Flynn was another political target of the FBI. He was crucified for 4 years, labeled a convict and a traitor by the FBI, whose director, Comey, laughed about getting away with it. You can even ask Hillary Clinton. She'll tell you the FBI is good at political investigations. They'll do a fake investigation with no search warrants and no grand jury.
So it's one rule for them and another one for everyone else.
Well, let's talk now more about Christopher Wray and that testimony yesterday. Let's get your reaction to what our own Emerald Robinson just reported there, that you might be on the short list to possibly replace Christopher Wray. Are you hearing about this? Has anyone contacted you?
No, that's the first I've heard about it, although I have seen comments like that on Twitter, and I'm honored to be considered for it. I can only imagine the number of people in Washington and elsewhere that would need laundry service upon that announcement. So it should be quite interesting.
Their political expertise continues to be confirmed with the declassification this week of Crossfire Hurricane documents, which proved President Trump was unfairly and illegally targeted for colluding with Russia after the FBI used a comic book make-believe dossier. Senate Judiciary Chair Lindsey Graham agrees. He said, "I believe the Crossfire Hurricane was one of the most incompetent and corrupt investigations in the history of the FBI and DOJ. The FISA court was lied to. Exculpatory information was withheld on those being investigated."
Well, given the way you turn the tide, so to speak, with the Micheal Flynn case, we're still waiting on Judge Emmett Sullivan to do the right thing here. But as we look at what we saw from the FBI director yesterday in this testimony, what we're learning now that he's still hiding back some of this exculpatory information, what did you think when you saw this testimony from FBI Director Christopher Wray yesterday?
Well, I have never been favorably impressed by Director Wray. There is so much he could have and should have done that he has not. Supposedly, there's an investigation into what happened in the FBI's conduct of the General Flynn case. We still don't have the original 302. We still don't have his briefings to the Defense Intelligence Agency that show that he briefed them on everything Russia-related and Turkey. The government knew everything he was doing, but we don't have the proof of that. So I just don't know what the heck he's been doing.
How sad is it that the agency that we have all grown up to revere and respect has totally abandoned its motto, fidelity, bravery, integrity, and is now a washed-up, top-heavy organization that does its best work in the swamp, destroying political opponents. If there is not a revamping of the FBI, you can expect the next 4 years under Joe Biden to find an ineffective police agency riddled with politics that will further divide an already divided country.